Hello and welcome to a new Ukraine war update. Today we have a lot of footage to go through, and I can promise that some really interesting events were documented this time. If you'd like to support me, please be sure to leave a like and a comment to help with the algorithm. Thank you very much. The full version of this update is available on my Telegram channel. The link is in the description. Now let's jump right into the footage. This helmet cam footage from Toretsk shows a Ukrainian soldier engaging a Russian position with his suppressed rifle, when he is suddenly forced to duck as the position he targeted is engulfed in a fireball. This was most likely caused by a thermobaric rocket launcher fired by another Ukrainian soldier at the Russian position. As you can see in this reference clip from a Russian live fire demonstration, the effect is quite similar. In this helmet cam video, a Russian soldier armed with a Leopard 12 multipurpose semi-automatic shotgun captures the moment a Ukrainian MRAP is hit by a Russian RPG during an assault on their positions, reportedly in the Kursk region. Slowed down footage from the original source shows the hit from an even closer perspective, but it appears the MRAP handled it quite well, even though a damage assessment is missing, leaving us to speculate about the final effect of the impact. This is an interesting piece of helmet cam footage showing a Ukrainian Special Forces unit from the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine during an urban combat operation in Kursk in the Kurshk region. I'll explain why this footage is particularly noteworthy in a moment. After the men infiltrated the settlement in pickup trucks, they began engaging suspected Russian positions with small arms fire at close range to clear the area. To put it simply, many of their shots were fired preventively to suppress potential Russian soldiers and force them into passivity. The particularly interesting detail that grabbed my attention was the use of a shotgun by one of the operators, marking the first time I've seen such a weapon used in combat against a ground target rather than a drone during a war. That is, if we set aside the previous clip. However, in this instance, the soldier was actively firing the shotgun. In this video, a lone Russian soldier directly approached a group of Ukrainian soldiers in a destroyed building in Toretsk, believing that the Ukrainians were fellow Russian soldiers. However, the Ukrainians immediately opened fire. In this short but somewhat chaotic situation, the soldier wearing the camera also flagged his buddy, who crossed through his field of view to change positions. Such scenarios highlight how the fog of war can increase the likelihood of errors and unplanned engagements in close quarters combat, where split-second decisions are made in high-stress, confusing environments. This uncertainty creates an atmosphere where even well-trained soldiers can flag teammates, misidentify threats, or engage in friendly fire, further complicating battlefield dynamics. This drone video, released by the 47th Mechanized Brigade, shows a Ukrainian Bradley and an American-made M1 Abrams operating on Russian soil for the first time in history as they engage a Russian position in the Kursk region. First, the Bradley moved in and hammered the Russian hideout with its 25mm automatic Bushmaster cannon. This was followed by the Abrams, which began shelling the area with its powerful main gun. At least 6 rounds were fired at the overwhelmed Russians as their position was heavily hit by shots fired from very close range. Cell phone footage captured the moment a Russian Shahid drone was hunted down by a Ukrainian Mi-24 Hind helicopter, which shot the drone down with its 12.7mm gun. To give a sense of the actual size of a Russian Shahid drone, here is one leaned against a Ukrainian home. This Russian tank, equipped with a mine roller, took a direct hit from a Ukrainian-fired Javelin missile. The tank kept moving for a while, however, 2 of the crew members began to bail out of the still-moving vehicle. Shortly afterward, the tank hit what appeared to be 2 mines, and the video ended. Here is another drone video showing a Javelin missile striking a Russian armored vehicle. It's pretty interesting that they still use Javelins, given all the access to anti-armored drones they have nowadays. The Russian pickup truck you see here was on its way to deliver Russian infantry to the Grey Zone. During its mission, a Ukrainian drone spotted and closely tracked the vehicle's movement to direct artillery fire onto it. When the Russian truck noticed the first round of sporadic artillery fire aimed at it, the driver began to speed up to escape the impact area. This just to hit a mine placed by Ukrainian engineers. A rather interesting video was released from the Kursk region, showing a Russian BTR with infantry riding on top as it drives toward a Ukrainian tank unit consisting of 2 tanks. The Ukrainian tanks in question are not Russian tanks captured by Ukrainian forces, as some misinformation spreading content farms sensationally claim, but rather Ukrainian T-64 tanks. It appears, however, that the BTR mistakenly identified the tanks as friendly as it calmly maneuvered in front of the tank's barrels, which then opened fire. After the first shell brought the BTR to a standstill, the second tank finished off the now immobilized vehicle with another shot. Contrary to what the previously mentioned content farms claimed, this was not the end of the story. The Russians managed to destroy one of the Ukrainian tanks shortly afterward, as shown in footage documenting the destroyed BTR and one of the Ukrainian tanks. This drone video also shows an interesting armor-on-armor engagement from the Kursk region, but this time from the other perspective, capturing a Russian L-shaped ambush conducted by 2 BTRs on an advancing Ukrainian MRAP column. We see a column of at least 10 Ukrainian armored vehicles driving directly into a kill zone set up by the 2 Russian BTRs. Russian sources claimed that the convoy consisted of a total of 19 vehicles, and while it's possible that more than 10 vehicles drove into the ambush, the low quality of the footage makes an accurate count difficult. One after another, the Ukrainian vehicles drove into the field of fire of the first BTR, which engaged the unresponsive Ukrainians with its automatic cannon at close range. In such a situation, they advised responses to immediately return fire while simultaneously reporting the contact by providing what is known as the 3Ds: distance, direction, and description. Distance refers to the approximate range to the enemy, direction specifies the bearing or location of the threat, and description includes details about the enemy forces, such as type and number of vehicles or personnel. It appears that the Ukrainians did not follow this procedure, as they simply kept pushing through the kill zone without returning or suppressing fire, which could have been very effective given that BTRs are typically vulnerable to caliber 50 guns. Those that managed to push through the fire of the first BTR maneuvered directly into the line of fire of a second BTR positioned slightly further away from the first. It's unclear why they were unable to determine the BTR's positions, given their close proximity and the likelihood that the Ukrainians had communication links between vehicles due to the convoy's size. That said, it's easy for us to analyze from a distance and say they should have acted this way or that. In the end, most manuals on how to react to an ambush while mounted, whether close or distant, were written with scenarios involving IEDs followed by small arms fire, or at most, RPGs in mind. They do not typically address situations involving 30mm cannons fired at lightly armored vehicles from very close range in a high-intensity engagement, turning any dismounting and assault through the ambush to destroy the enemy into a guaranteed suicide mission. I think the outcome was more due to poor ISR beforehand and the general challenges of attempting fast-paced maneuver warfare, where time frames become increasingly compressed due to the omnipresence of drones. The only option would have been to bypass the ambush, which was not possible due to poor ISR in this case, or for the vehicles that hadn't yet entered the kill zone to consolidate, set up security and establish a base of fire to support the elements already in the kill zone. However, this was also not feasible, as the final Russian assault element closing the ambush would most likely have been replaced by FPV drones just waiting to interfere with this. This footage from the 225th Assault Battalion shows a pair of German-supplied Marder 183 infantry fighting vehicles maneuvering through heavy Russian fire consisting of RPGs and FPV drones. The video was filmed by a camera strapped on top of one of the Marders during an assault on a Russian-held forest strip in Kurshk. The vehicle had several close calls with RPGs and FPVs but was not hit once. Given that the Marder 183 needs to fire from a standstill for optimal accuracy as its cannon is not stabilized, this is remarkable. While the RPG misses can largely be attributed to luck, the FPV drones were likely thwarted by electronic warfare systems in place that protected the IFVs from incoming Russian drones. So far, actual footage of the Marder in action has been extremely rare, as we've only really seen them in combat during the battle in Kursk. Previously, most footage showed either training exercises or abandoned Marders being destroyed by Russian drones. I think this clip is especially interesting for my fellow German viewers, as it is the first time ground combat footage of German-made Marder IFVs in action has been released, and this in exactly the scenario they were designed for. This Russian soldier was leaning against a disabled BTR with a missing wheel. In the nearby vicinity, more Russian soldiers were resting when they suddenly got interrupted by an incoming Ukrainian drone, and as if the drone wasn't enough, the Ukrainian Leopard tank suddenly appeared on the horizon and targeted the disabled Russian armored personnel carrier with its main cannon. This Ukrainian Leopard 2A4 tank also had the opportunity for some armor target practice under real combat conditions, as it was dispatched to disrupt an advancing Russian armored column, targeting it from a distance with its Rheinmetall manufactured 120mm smoothbore cannon. The Leopard executed a shoot and scoot maneuver, scoring direct hits on several Russian vehicles with what appeared to be high explosive shells. This is the last Leopard 2 video for today, as I promised there is plenty of other footage to share in this update. Here, we once again see a Leopard 2A4 from the 33rd Mechanized Brigade, but this time it is driving directly in front of a Russian-held tree line while shelling it. In this drone video, a Ukrainian observation drone closely monitors a Russian MRAP moving along a road in the Kursk region. It was en route to a vehicle wreck site where a Russian BTR had previously crashed, aiming to evacuate the infantry at the scene and likely tow the damaged BTR back to a secure location. However, as you can see, this attempt was disrupted by an incoming Ukrainian FPV drone targeting the MRAP. This forced the Russian soldiers to disperse and take cover in nearby bushes as the Ukrainian kamikaze drone dove in and struck the Russian vehicle. Notice how the fire following the explosion was severe enough to spread over to the BTR. Russia appears to have scored another hit on a Ukrainian Patriot defense battery, as shown in drone footage released by the Russian Ministry of Defense. The video, filmed from a distance by a Russian observation drone, shows a total of 2 hits on the Patriot site immediately after what appeared to be missile launches from 2 of the Patriot launchers in self-defense. Russia stated that 2 US-made Patriot launcher stations, as well as a control station and radar unit that are part of the Patriot system, were struck in the 2 attacks. However, a clear damage assessment is missing, so only the Ukrainians and Russians truly know the outcome of this missile strike. A Ukrainian military blogger reported that the strike took place in Pavlorad in the central Dnipropetrovsk region, but stated that the damage was not critical. Kyiv relies on Western air defense systems, particularly the Patriot, to protect itself from the barrage of Russian missiles and has been calling for additional deliveries. Well, I'd better leave this one uncommented. I mean, what can I say to this? Crazy times we live in. His French-supplied Ukrainian Caesar howitzer of the 55th Artillery Brigade scored a series of accurate hits on Russian armor somewhere along the front line. While these hits are pretty impressive, they are nothing compared to the next clip. Here, an M777 howitzer from the 148th Artillery Brigade scored a direct hit on a moving Russian tank. Possible that this was a guided Excalibur shell. The tank kept rolling for a short distance, but eventually crashed and came to a standstill. In this clip, a Ukrainian drone drop targeted a Russian UGV from above. The drone successfully hit the unmanned ground vehicle, causing it to catch fire shortly afterward. Despite being engulfed in flames, the UGV continued to move. After coming to a halt for a short time, the UGV began moving once again. It's quite interesting that it was still partially operational even while on fire, but I suppose that's one of the advantages that comes with machines. Here, a Ukrainian tank advances toward a stationary Russian BMP and destroys it at very close range with its main cannon, all filmed from the screen of the observation drone operator. In a noteworthy friendly fire incident, a Russian fighter jet shot down a rare Russian S-70 Okhotnik stealth drone over Ukraine. At first, it was thought that the Russian jet had shot down another Russian fighter plane in a friendly fire incident, but footage of the drone falling to the ground later revealed that it was an S-70. While this was definitely a friendly fire incident, it is likely that the Russian plane shot the drone down intentionally, as the missile was launched from very close range, meaning the pilot most likely had visual confirmation of the target. He was most likely ordered to shoot it down because the Russians lost connection with it, and the decision was made to prevent it from ending up in enemy hands. This video reportedly shows the first documented use of Rheinmetall's 35mm Skynex air defense system in action, targeting Russian UAVs over Ukraine's capital. The Skynex system's advanced hit efficiency and destruction technology uses specialized ammunition that bursts into a cloud of tungsten sub-projectiles mid-flight, increasing the likelihood of hitting and disabling small, fast-moving targets like kamikaze drones.
Группа, третья группа, 2 человека к нам на эвакуацию, 2 человека к нам. 300.
This Russian helmet cam video shows a squad of Russian soldiers caught in an open field during an intense firefight. The soldiers are engaging Ukrainian positions while also being targeted by Ukrainian fire and drones hovering above them. Out in the open without cover, they try to hold their ground. According to some Russian sources, the reason they were out there was to act as a distraction to cover the assault of another Russian unit. However, this is unconfirmed, even though it would explain why they were exposed in the open. In theory, this allows the primary assault group to exploit gaps in the enemy's defenses by taking advantage of the diverted focus. However, without confirmation, it's unclear if this was indeed the intended purpose behind their deployment. Without natural or artificial cover, troops are fully exposed to direct fire from small arms, machine guns, snipers, and even indirect fire like mortars or artillery. In an open area, there is no immediate protection from incoming rounds, which forces soldiers to rely on quick movements or lying prone to minimize exposure, though these actions offer only limited protection. In modern combat, exposure to aerial surveillance, particularly from drones, further increases the danger. Drones can easily detect troops in open terrain and relay precise coordinates back to artillery or mortar teams, adding significant risk. Being in an exposed position restricts soldiers' ability to maneuver effectively. Options like advancing or moving laterally often mean exposing themselves further, increasing the chance of being hit. Repositioning or retreating across open ground is equally challenging, as movement makes them more visible and vulnerable to enemy fire. The psychological strain of facing such exposure with no barriers between them and the enemy can lead to intense anxiety and fatigue, impairing reaction times and decision-making and affecting both individual soldiers and the squad's overall effectiveness. Open terrain severely limits tactical options. Soldiers might try to engage the enemy while lying prone, but with minimal protection, their chances of sustaining casualties remain high. That's why it's no wonder that this soldier ended up within the blast radius of a drone-dropped explosive. However, he was lucky and escaped with just a fright. This kind of deployment is high risk and often sacrificial, as distraction units have few ways to defend or withdraw. In situations where open exposure is unavoidable, troops can employ certain tactics to reduce the risk. Deploying smoke screens, for example, can obscure vision, providing temporary cover. Suppressive fire may help keep enemy heads down, though it requires adequate ammunition and a clear line of sight. Quick sprints between any available low cover or terrain depressions can also reduce time spent exposed, though the effectiveness of this approach depends heavily on the landscape. In sum, being caught in open terrain during a firefight is an extremely hazardous scenario, and soldiers facing this rely on quick thinking, coordination, and any available tactical support to minimize exposure and increase their chances of survival. If you've watched this far, I want to thank you once again. Please make sure to share this video, leave a comment, and like it to support me and my content. This helps the videos reach a wider audience. I am also currently looking for scriptwriters and video editors to help me create better content. If you're a writer with experience in military and war team topics, or a video editor skilled in video editing, motion graphics, and map animations, please check the description for more information. Thank you. In Kursk, Russian drone operators have increasingly turned to fiber optic cables to control FPV drones, particularly where electronic warfare interference is intense. This method gives operators a reliable alternative to radio frequencies, which are often jammed or intercepted by Ukrainian forces. The main advantage of fiber optics lies in its resistance to electronic warfare. Unlike radio-controlled drones, which can be jammed or tracked, fiber optic-controlled drones are immune to radio-based interference. This makes them a valuable tool in areas where signal disruption is common, as fiber optic cables transmit data via light, making jamming impossible. The cables also support stable, high-bandwidth communication, crucial for transmitting real-time video feeds for surveillance and targeting. With this steady connection, operators can maintain high-quality visuals and better respond to developments on the ground. This brave, lone Ukrainian M113 armored personnel carrier was on its way to carry out a very dangerous but vital mission in the area around Chernihiv Yar. Tasked with delivering critical supplies to Ukrainian forces stationed in a large, multi-story apartment building, the M113 had to navigate exposed terrain under the constant threat of enemy fire. In conflict zones like Chernihiv Yar, these resupply missions are essential for maintaining frontline defenses and supporting troops in fortified positions. The danger of this mission is highlighted by this Russian-released FPV drone video showing a different Ukrainian M113 variant being struck by a small first-person drone equipped with an RPG warhead. The M113 is only lightly armored, making even heavy-caliber machine guns a threat to it. This abandoned and burning Russian tank, equipped with a mine roller at the front, was used by Ukrainian drone pilots for target practice, dropping grenades through the hole in its added roof protection. The same tactic was also applied to a disabled MTLB. This helmet cam footage shows two Ukrainian Special Forces operators from the Ukrainian 8th Separate Special Operations Regiment in very close combat with at least one Russian soldier in one of the many ghost towns along Ukraine's front line. The two special operators, armed with saw machine guns, were about to enter an abandoned house, most likely to set up a firing position inside. However, the building was already being used as a hideout by at least one Russian soldier, who immediately opened fire on the lead operator just as he was about to enter. Luckily for the Ukrainians, the Russian missed his shots, allowing them to jump back into the open. From there, the soldier wearing the camera began firing his machine gun at a cyclic rate to suppress the Russian inside, enabling the two Ukrainians to break contact and fall back slightly to deal with the Russian in a different way. To get the situation under control, they used a shoulder-mounted rocket launcher to fire at a relatively small house. This Russian helmet cam video shows a pair of Russian soldiers on an ATV in a forest near Kupiansk. The soldiers hit what was reported to be a mine and had to continue their journey on foot through the desolate landscape that was once a forest. However, the mine was not the only danger lurking there, and soon the two men were targeted by a Ukrainian FPV drone. They attempted to respond by hiding behind a destroyed, abandoned vehicle wreck while using small arms fire to intercept the drone. Unfazed by their fire, the drone made several passes, trying to get the right angle to crash into the soldiers, who were still calmly attempting to shoot it down. Unfortunately for them, all their attempts failed, and the drone began its final dive to finish them off after trying some more times. Such videos from Ukraine often remind me of the Netflix show Black Mirror, particularly the footage captured in the Grey Zone, or so-called no man's land, between Russian and Ukrainian controlled territory. It always brings to mind the episode called Metalhead. Leave a like and write it in the comments if you know what I mean. Fortunately, however, the drone missed by just inches, leaving both Russians unharmed. This nerve-wracking back and forth clearly illustrates the intensity of such an attack, which is difficult to counter even if soldiers are sometimes successful in shooting down the FPVs. In this case, another Russian buddy team riding on an ATV was chased by a Ukrainian FPV drone. They responded by dismounting and opening fire on it, causing the drone to crash to the ground and explode just a few meters in front of them, fortunately outside their blast radius. While these occurrences are no longer rare and we frequently see such interception videos, there are still many unsuccessful attempts. This is true even though, statistically, 70% of FPV drone attacks fail due to jamming or other external factors. Unable to escape was this Russian anti-air defense system, which was chased by a Ukrainian loitering munition, possibly a Switchblade or a domestically produced Ukrainian variant, that struck the air defense system while it was on the move. What do you think about the quality of my commentary? Let me know in the comments. I'm always eager to improve the videos, so please leave your feedback.